Hello everyone, welcome to another video from S Incorporation. My name is Shahan and I'm a data engineer by profession. This video is for this video is a practical demonstration of creating a load balancer in Azure, and I'm not going to be telling you the details about the concept of the load balancer and why it's uh, very important if you want to keep your application live all the time. So for those details, if you want those details, you can comment in the comment section and make a request so that I will create another video for all those concepts that you want to know about the video. So first of all, I will have to create resource group for this video. I'm going to name it as a demo load balancer because all the resources that I'm going to insert in this resource group will be related to this demo only. I'm not going to use any tags in any of the resources, so I will skip that section and move on to create the load balancer resource group. Next is I will have to create some IP addresses. I'm gonna need 3 IP addresses for my resources. One is for the load balancer IP address, and I'm selecting internet because I will be using this IP address for the internet connectivity rather than inside the Microsoft network. Next one is the selection of resource group, and I will keep the location same for all the resources in this video. So East US is my default selection, so I will keep the default selection as a region. And next is to create the IP address. Once this is under progress, I can create another IP address for the VM1. VM1 IP address. I will use Microsoft Network because this will be placed behind the this IP address will be placed behind the load balancer. So load balancer IP address was internet facing, and this will be used for internal Microsoft Network. So that I'm using the Microsoft Network for this IP address. Uh, Next is the resource group. The same resource group, I will also use the zone redundancy option. Okay, this one is also under deployment now. I can create another one for VM2 and select the same resource group and select the same availability zone. So I changed some settings for the load balancer IP address and for the two IP addresses of the VMs. I kept same settings for the two IP addresses of for the VMs and kept the settings for load balancer appropriate for the load balancer only. That was Microsoft Internet or Internet selection. So if you are selecting the Microsoft Internet option, then you can select the availability zone options as well. But if you are selecting the internet connectivity or the internet option, then you can not select the availability zones, availability redundancy, I mean. So this is done. I think if I will refresh it, I will see another IP address over here, and I can see that in this resource group I have 3 IP addresses as well. So next I can create the load balancer, and I will select the same IP address that I just created for the load balancer during this creation of load balancer. So my load balancer is the name for this, same location, and type is public because I'm going to use this load balancer for the internet instead of within the Microsoft network. I'm gonna use the standard SKU because Microsoft recommends it, and it has a lot of more options than the basic one. And I'm going to use the existing IP address, that is load balancer IP address. It has already detected that. I'm not going to add any tags. So let's review and create this load balancer. Okay, this is under deployment now. I can move on to create virtual machines. And the first virtual machine, will be named as VM1, same region, and the image will be Ubuntu. No matter, it doesn't matter that you are selecting Ubuntu or any other flavor of Linux, because it's just a demo. So I'm keeping all the default options, and the size of the processor also will be kept as the default one. So I'm going to use this username and password for the authentication. I'm not going to allow any inbound ports right now, but I'm going to configure this in the next section, that is networking. I'm going to use the standard HTTP because it will cost me very less instead of the standard STD, because it's just a demo, so that's why I'm selecting the most basic version for the disk. I'm going to use the IP address that I just created, VM1 IP address, and the network security group. I'm going to use the same NSG for both the VMs. That's why I've kept the name as NSG. So I will select the same NSG for both the VM1 and VM2. And for SSH, I'm going to allow only my IP. Allow only my IP for the SSH connection to be secure enough, and I'll add another inbound rule for the same IP, that is my public IP, my computer's public IP, HTTP. This one is for HTTP. This like inbound rule is for HTTP connection, and the priority. I can tell you about priority as well, that the lesser the number, the more the priority is. And the name will be Apache because I'm going to run Apache web server on this port. All right, the inbound rules are done. I can move on to select that I'm going to place this virtual machine behind a load balancer. So this is my load balancer that I created previously. I don't have any backend pool right now, so I can name it as my backend pool, so that this VM will be inserted in this backend pool. Again, this is a conceptual thing, and you may need some more clarification on this, so that if you need any clarification in these concepts, I can make another video to explain all these information to you. Okay, let's create it. All right, so this is under deployment now. I can go on to make another VM that I'm gonna need for this demonstration, the VM2 that is, and the password authentication. I will use the same username and password for both the VMs because it's not a production environment. So I don't want to be confused between the username and password for the separate VMs. This is the VM2 option. You have only three options over here. The reason is that the other two IP addresses have already been attached with the VM1 and the load balancer. So I have only one option that is already in my list, and the new IP that I can create. So I don't need the new IP. I have already one IP just created previously, so that I will select that one. I will use the same NSG that was created for the VM1. So that the reason why I'm using the same NSG is that I want to use the same security rules that were made for the VM1, so that I will not have to go from one NSG to second NSG for making change in the inbound rules for the separate VMs. So that's why I'm selecting the same energy. I've selected the load balancer, the same backend pool that was for the VM1, and this is my second VM. In my second VM, you can see the name, and let's create this. Okay, so meanwhile it's under deployment, I can go on to log in my VM1. Actually, I'm gonna go to the list of virtual machines, and this is my IP address for the VM1. This is my password. Okay, this is logged in. Next, I want to run Apache server on my port 80 because you just saw that I allowed my connection to port 80 for this VM and the other one as well. So this is a URL I just used from for the Apache web server installation. I'm not going to be completing all these steps. I will just install the Apache 2 server on and run it on my port 80 of the VM1 and VM2. This will install the Apache server. For the VM2, I'm going to follow the same steps. The same password and the same steps to install the web server. Okay, so this will install the web server on both the VMs. Next, I will have to add the health probe inside my load balancer. The reason why I'm doing this is because I have to make some changes, or you can say I have to make some configuration changes in my load balancer to be able to um, check the health status of both my VMs. So first of all, I will have to add the health probe, which will check the health status of my VMs. My load balancer health probe. I need to check the HTTP on this port for this path after every 5 seconds, and if there are two consecutive failures for a VM between both the VMs, then that VM will be marked as unhealthy for this health probe. So I think it's enough in detail for all the settings that I have kept here. And this one is done. I can close this right now. This one is also done. I can close this. I can check that the server is running accurately. This is the default page. It's running, and the virtual machine 2 is this one. This one is also working. I can refresh this and see that there is a lot of resources that has been created within this resource group. So I will just complete this video and delete this resource group so that all these resources will be deleted and I will not be charged for any of these anymore. Now I will have to my health probe is created. I will have to add some balancing rules on the basis of this health probe. So balancing rule will allow you to make some rules for the load balancer, that which VM should be connected under what circumstances. So right now I'm using the health probe to tell me that if a VM is unavailable or it's unhealthy, then move the direction from one VM to another from the load balancer. Then redirect the all the traffic from the load balancer to the VM that is healthy enough to receive the request from the client. So I'm gonna name it as my load balancer rule 1, and front end IP is the same as this one. Then the port 80, backend port also 80. This is the port that will be used for the internet to communicate to this load balancer, and this is the port that is the backend port that is for the VMs that are going to be like used to redirect the traffic that is coming to this port to this port. Okay, the backend pool is selected, the health probe is selected. Session persistence, I'm not going to like tell you the details about this. Again, it's need some more time and a separate video to explain all these settings or whatever information you want to have about these settings. Once this load balancing rule is completed, we can check that the load balancer is working fine or not by turning off one of the VMs and then see whether we are able to go to this page or not. So this is the public IP address of VM2. I'm going to change this to the load balancer IP address, this one. When I will paste it, it will take me to one of the VMs. So this one is done. You can see that I have changed the IP address from VM2 IP address to the load balancer's IP address, and still I am able to see this page that is your index page, the default page for the web server. So if I will stop one of the VMs, like if I will stop VM1, okay, it's under progress, stopping virtual machine. Once this is done, I will show you that the application is still working and you can still see the page of Apache web server, the default page. Okay, let me check that the status has been changed or not. The status is now deallocating, so we cannot like go on to see this page again uh, like this. So it will be like waiting for the IP, waiting for the server to connect, but it will not receive my request like this. But if I want to see my application again, I will use the load balancer IP address and paste it over here, and I can see the page again like this. This is why, because the load balancer is now redirecting the traffic to the VM2, because the VM1 is unhealthy. It's stopped and deallocated, so all the traffic will go to the VM2 because of the load balancer. Now the next steps are additional. You may need to perform those all or not, but I want to show you that you can connect this IP to your domain as well, so that this practical will be completed uh, as if you want to connect any of your domains to this IP address, and the user will hit that domain, so that you will be able to see your application in front of you with the full load balancing feature. I will go to AWS domain provider, and I have one of the domains over here that are live right now. So I can add an A rule to this that will point to my load balancer, that will point to my load balancer, and save it. And now if I go to this website, I can see the default page that is actually the VM2 running right now. So this is done. I think you can now install the load balancer for your applications inside Azure very easily. I hope to see you again for the next video. Bye bye.